My name is Rebecca Kingsman, and I am 43 years old. On paper, my life looks exactly the way adults tell you it should look when you're a kid. Respectable, stable, sensible. I'm a senior financial analyst at a mid-size investment firm in Chicago. I know my way around balance sheets and risk models better than I know my way around dating apps. My workdays are a steady rhythm of spreadsheets, earnings calls, and clients who only remember I exist when the market dips and they need someone to blame. I live alone in a two-bedroom condo I bought 10 years ago, not because I needed the space, but because the mortgage calculation made sense. I have an emergency fund, a slowly but steadily growing brokerage account, and a retirement portfolio I've nurtured for 2 decades like a very boring, very lucrative houseplant. I do have a boyfriend, Ethan. We've been together for 3 years. We spend weekends trying new restaurants and arguing over whether action movies need better plots, but we keep our finances and our housing separate. Marriage isn't off the table, but it's not something I'm ready to bet my future on just because everyone else thinks I should. If you looked at my life from the outside, you'd probably say, she's doing fine. But my story isn't about Ethan or my job or the quiet little routines I've built for myself. It's about the day my family dragged me into court because I refused to burn my retirement savings to pay for my brother's third wedding. Yes, third. And yes, we'll get to the lawsuit, but to understand how insane things became, you have to meet my family. Before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Because trust me, if you think your family is dramatic, you haven't met mine. I'm the youngest of two. My older brother, Gabriel, is 46, the golden child of the Kingsman family. Growing up, I was the quiet one who did her homework and stacked her allowance into neat little envelopes. Gabriel was the charming tornado who could talk his way out of detention and into any girl's good graces. Our parents, Robert and Barbara, are both 74 now, retired, and living in the same modest house in Oak Park where we grew up. Dad spent his life as an electrician. Mom worked as a dental hygienist. They're good people in a lot of ways, hardworking, generous, and fiercely loyal. But when it comes to money, we live on different planets. To them, money is something you spend on experiences and family. If a bill shows up, you figure it out later. If someone needs help, you open your wallet, even if your bank account is crying. To me, money is math. It's trade-offs. It's, if I say yes to this now, what will I have to say no to when I'm 70? That difference was always there, humming under the surface like faulty wiring. But for the most part, we kept it contained. Until Gabriel got engaged. Again. This entire mess, I tell people, started 8 months before the court date when my brother announced his engagement to wife number 3. We were at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, one of Dad's favorite places to go when he wanted to feel fancy. Dark wood, leather booths, waiters who act like they're personally offended if you undertip. I was halfway through my salad when Gabriel cleared his throat and tapped his fork against his glass. "All right, everybody, listen up," he said, grinning like a kid with a secret. "I've got an announcement." My stomach sank before he even opened his mouth. Years of being his sister have given me a sixth sense for incoming chaos. "I asked Lauren to marry me," he said, holding up Lauren's hand so her ring caught the light, and she said yes. Lauren, to be fair, seemed nice enough. 39, smart, a family law attorney with an impeccable blazer collection and a smile that said she was used to winning arguments. If anyone should have understood the risks of marrying my brother, financial and otherwise, it was her. Mom gasped, "Oh, Gabriel, that's wonderful." She clapped her hands, eyes shining. Dad's chest puffed out like he'd personally negotiated the engagement. The waiter offered champagne before I could even process the size of that diamond. It was huge, 3 carats at least. I knew enough to guess that it cost more than my car. I took a slow sip of water and tried to keep my face neutral. "Bex," Gabriel said, using the nickname I hate, "I want you to be my maid of honor again." "Again?" I arched an eyebrow. "Gabriel, I was your maid of honor twice already. Don't you think it's time to give someone else a turn?" "Come on," he said, flashing that same charming smile that had gotten him out of so many messes. "Third time's the charm, right?" Across the table, Mom laughed like he'd said something adorable instead of disturbing. "When are you thinking of having the wedding?" she asked, practically vibrating with excitement. "We're thinking spring," Lauren said, her fingers stroking the ring like it was a small pet. Something elegant at the Botanic Garden. Nothing too over the top, just memorable. The word memorable from my brother's mouth has never meant simple or affordable. It has always meant expensive and someone else will pay. I felt it then, a little tug in my chest, a whisper of anxiety I tried to ignore. You know how this goes, it said. You've seen this movie twice. I pushed the thought aside. People change, right? Maybe this time would be different. Maybe therapy and age and 2 failed marriages had finally taught Gabriel something. Spoiler, they had not. Over the next few weeks, I got little updates whether I wanted them or not. We found the perfect venue, Gabriel told me over coffee at Starbucks, sliding a picture of the Botanic Garden across the table on his phone. 7-course dinner, live jazz band, imported orchids, open bar. It's going to be perfect. Lauren deserves the wedding of her dreams. It sounds elaborate, I said carefully. How are you planning to pay for all this? Gabriel waved a hand like money was a minor logistical detail. We've got some savings. Plus, I'm expecting a big commission check next month. That hospital contract, it's going to be huge. I'd heard versions of that sentence my entire life. The big bonus that was coming next quarter, the deal that was basically done, the new territory that was going to change everything. Sometimes the money showed up. More often, it didn't. Gabriel, I said, have you actually run the numbers? Weddings add up fast. He leaned back, sipping his latte. Relax, Bex. You worry too much. That's what everyone in my family says right before they ask me for money. 2 months later, my phone rang while I was at my desk, buried in quarterly reports. Gabriel's name flashed on the screen. I knew the call wasn't going to be good news before I answered. There's a certain weight in someone's silence before they speak, like the pause before a storm breaks. Hey, I said, what's up? He exhaled sharply. Bex, I need to talk to you about something important. The commission didn't come through, I guessed. A beat of silence. How did you know that? Because I know you, I wanted to say. Because I've lived this pattern my entire life. Just a hunch, I replied. He launched into it in a rush. The commission fell through. The wedding estimate went up. They were now looking at around $68,000 total. $68,000, I repeated slowly. For a wedding. It's going to be incredible, he insisted. Lauren deserves it. And we've already put down deposits, sent invitations. We can't back out now. You can, I said. People change wedding plans all the time. Smaller venues, fewer guests. You have options. Not really, he said. Lauren would be devastated. This is her first big wedding, you know. My other marriages were smaller. That was one way to rewrite history. His smaller second wedding in Cabo had cost more than my Honda Accord. He went quiet for a moment, then cleared his throat. Look, I was hoping maybe you could help us out, he said. Just temporarily, until things pick up. There it was. My chest tightened. How much are we talking about? Maybe 25, 30,000? I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Gabriel, I said, you want me to give you $30,000 for a wedding? Not give, he said quickly. Lend. I'll pay you back with interest, I promise. You're doing amazing with your investments. You've told me you have over $220,000 in your 401k. You wouldn't even miss it. There was a ringing in my ears. I had told him that number once, in a moment of misguided vulnerability, after a couple glasses of wine last Thanksgiving. I'd been proud of myself, proud of what I'd built. And now here it was, turned into a target. Gabriel, I said slowly, that money is for my retirement. If I touch it now, I pay taxes, penalties, and I lose years of growth. That's not free money. That's my future. You're only 43, he argued. You've got time to make it back. I just need help right now. This is the most important day of my life. Somewhere deep down, a quiet thought surfaced. He said that exact sentence about Ashley. He said that exact sentence about Brittany. I'm not comfortable lending that kind of money for a wedding, I said. I'm sorry. The line went cold. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, but sharper. I didn't think you'd be this selfish, Bex. I stared at the spreadsheets on my screen, numbers blurring. I had no idea then that saying no in that moment would lead to a lawsuit, a courtroom, and my own father standing up in front of a judge to declare that I had a legal obligation to sacrifice my future for my brother's third walk down the aisle. Back then, I thought I was just refusing to finance a party. I didn't realize I was about to put my entire definition of family on trial. If there is one thing my family excels at, it is turning a private disagreement into a community event. I thought telling Gabriel no would be the end of it. A boundary set, a rational decision respected. I should have known better. The pressure started the next morning. I was meal prepping for the week. Chicken breast, roasted vegetables, the same routine I've kept for years. When my phone buzzed. Mom calling. I rinsed my hands, bracing myself. Hi, Mom. Rebecca, sweetheart, she said with the voice she uses right before asking for something. I talked to Gabriel yesterday. Of course she had. He's very stressed, she continued. Maybe you could help him out a little, just until things settle? A little, I repeated. Mom, he asked for $30,000. Silence, then. Well, you have so much saved up. What's the point of money if you don't use it to help family? There it was, the Kingsman family motto, engraved emotionally, if not legally. Mom, it's my retirement. With penalties, I'd lose almost 40%. It's not smart. But you always get bonuses, she insisted. You'll make it back, and Gabriel needs you. It's his wedding. I closed my eyes. Mom, a wedding is not an emergency. The air went cold over the line. Rebecca, she said sharply, family should never be this selfish. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone, that familiar sinking feeling spreading through my chest. If Mom had called, Dad wouldn't be far behind. I was right. Dad called that evening while I was brushing my teeth. Rebecca, he said without preamble, your mother tells me you refused to help your brother. I did, yes. A sigh, deep and disappointed. You've become so rigid about money. We didn't raise you like that. A little sacrifice won't kill you. Dad, I said, gripping the sink, this is my retirement. It's my safety net. And Gabriel is your brother. He needs you. We have always helped you. Helped me? The last time I asked for anything from them, I was 16 and needed $50 for a school trip. Dad said no, because he wanted to save for Gabriel's new baseball gear. But I didn't remind him of that. I just swallowed the bitterness. I'm not doing it, I said quietly. Dad exhaled sharply. I'm disappointed in you, Rebecca. He hung up. The toothpaste on my toothbrush had grown cold. Over the next week, the calls came in like a coordinated attack. My Aunt Diane, my cousin Valerie, Uncle Stephen, even my godmother. All with the same script, the same tone, the same guilt. Your brother needs your help. Family comes first. You're lucky to be so successful. You don't know how much your refusal is hurting your mother. The worst part? Gabriel had clearly told them I was sitting on a dragon's hoard of cash and refusing to share. He made it seem like I had millions, like helping would be nothing, like I was cruel. I began to notice something else. None of them asked why I said no. They simply assumed I was wrong. The call from Lauren, Saturday morning. I was in my leggings, unrolling my yoga mat, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. I should have. Hello? Hi, Rebecca. It's Lauren. Her voice was soft, polite, almost too polite. Oh, hi. I know this is awkward, she began, but Gabriel told me you're hesitant about helping with the wedding. Hesitant, interesting choice of word. I'm not lending $30,000, I said plainly. It's not feasible. I understand, she said gently. I really do. But Gabriel mentioned you have over $220,000 saved in your retirement account. We're not asking for all of it, just enough to make the day special. I froze. That number, I'd never told her that number. Only Gabriel knew. My throat tightened. Lauren, how do you know my account balance? A tiny pause. Oh, Gabriel showed me some of the financial papers he found at your house. I just assumed. I closed my eyes. Heat shot up my spine. He went through my home office without asking, I said slowly. He photographed private financial documents. Oh, she said, her tone clipped with discomfort. I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it. He just wanted to see if there was flexibility. Flexibility. That was when something in me cracked. Lauren, I said calmly but coldly, my retirement is not a wedding fund, and Gabriel had no right to invade my privacy. She exhaled. I was hoping we could come to an understanding. This wedding means a lot to me. It doesn't mean more than my financial future. The sweetness in her tone vanished. I didn't expect you to be this unreasonable, she said, and hung up. I just sat on the floor in stunned silence. The Sunday dinner ambush. Then came the night everything snapped. Mom invited me to Sunday dinner. Just family, she'd said. Nothing stressful. A lie, as it turns out. When I arrived at my parents' house, Mom was fussing with the pot roast and Dad was setting the table. Gabriel was there. Lauren was there. A thick folder sat on the dining room table like something waiting to detonate. I felt the trap before I even sat down. Dinner was awkward. Forced pleasantries, tight smiles, forks scraping plates. Halfway through, Gabriel cleared his throat. Bex, he said, voice trembling with dramatic tension, we need to show you something. He opened the folder. Out slid pages and pages of contracts. Venue, catering, florist, band, photographer, deposits already paid. All non-refundable. Lauren watched me like a hawk. These are commitments we've already made, she said. We can't just cancel. You could, I said. You just don't want to. Gabriel pressed a hand to his forehead. We'll lose over $20,000 in deposits, Bex. That's unfortunate, I said evenly, but it's not my responsibility. Mom slammed her fork down. Enough. She turned to me, eyes burning. Your brother needs help, and you're acting like a stranger, not family. You will help him. I stared at her. No, I said softly, I won't. Dad stood suddenly, the chair scraping back across the floor. Then, with a voice so cold it carved itself into my memory, he said, Rebecca, if you don't help your brother, you're not welcome in this family anymore. Mom nodded silently beside him. Lauren looked smug. Gabriel looked desperate. My whole body went numb. You're disowning me, I whispered, because I won't cash out my 401k for a wedding? Dad didn't blink. Family means sacrifice. If you can't understand that, maybe you don't understand family. I rose slowly. Then I guess I'll see myself out. I walked out of the house into the cold night air, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't know it yet, but the next move my family made would be worse, far worse than emotional manipulation. 3 weeks later, I learned just how far they were willing to go, because that's when the lawsuit arrived. The lawsuit arrived on a gray Thursday morning, tucked neatly between my water bill and an Amazon package. At first, I thought it was junk mail, a thick envelope stamped with Sinclair and Walsh, Family Legal Services. I almost tossed it out. Then I saw my name printed in bold across the front. Rebecca Kingsman, defendant. My stomach dropped so violently I had to grip the counter. I tore the envelope open with shaking fingers. At the top of the packet, in all caps legal formatting that felt like a punch, petition for court-ordered family financial assistance. I sank onto a bar stool as the words blurred in front of me. They were suing me. Not just Gabriel, not just Lauren, but my parents, Robert and Barbara Kingsman, had signed the filing too. My own family had dragged me into court to force me to cash out my retirement savings. My throat tightened as I flipped through the pages. The lawsuit accused me of unjustly hoarding retirement resources, failing to uphold reasonable family obligations, causing emotional harm through financial abandonment, and, my personal favorite, allowing family members to suffer hardship while maintaining an excessive personal reserve. Hardship. They were calling a luxury wedding hardship. I felt something inside me fracture. A quiet, subtle snap I didn't hear fully until later. But the part that made me genuinely dizzy was the evidence packet. Attached were photographs, high resolution, crystal clear, of my personal financial documents, 401k statements, contribution logs, account balances, retirement projections, even my account numbers. Before I could stop myself, tears blurred my vision. My home office, on Thanksgiving. The night Gabriel offered to help me stack chairs after dinner. He hadn't been helping. He had been gathering ammunition. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I called him. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Bex. Stop calling me that, I snapped. Did you go through my personal files? Did you photograph my retirement statements? A pause. Then the most cowardly answer imaginable. I don't see why you're making this a big deal. Gabriel, I said, voice shaking. That was a gross invasion of privacy. You weren't listening to reason, he said defensively. We needed proof you could help. We? Mom and Dad agreed. I cut him off. You sued me for $30,000. For a wedding. Do you understand how insane that is? You left us no choice, Jean, he shot back. You have the money. We need it. Families support each other. No, I said, feeling my anger burn clean for the first time in weeks. Families don't extort each other. He inhaled sharply. You're doing well, Rebecca, he said, voice rising. You can afford to help. You're choosing not to. I don't owe you my future, I whispered. And I hung up. I called Sarah Thompson next, the only lawyer I knew personally, a contract specialist I'd hired once for work. She met me the next day in her office, her dark glasses pushed up on her head and a legal pad in hand. Walk me through everything, she said calmly. I slid the lawsuit across the table. Her eyebrows shot up. They're suing you for family financial obligations? She flipped a page. For a wedding? Oh, they're out of their minds. When she reached the part with my account numbers, she swore under her breath. Rebecca, this isn't just frivolous. This borders on harassment and malicious intent. Her voice softened. I'm sorry. I know this must hurt. It did hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Can they win? I asked. She shook her head firmly. No, absolutely not. There is no legal obligation for you to fund a sibling's wedding. This will get dismissed. Relief washed over me. Brief, temporary relief. But, she continued, a frivolous lawsuit still costs time, and money, and stress. Are you prepared to fight this? I straightened. I'll fight. That's what I wanted to hear. We began gathering evidence. My retirement statements, penalty calculations, documentation proving the losses I'd face, wedding contracts showing luxury, not necessity, Gabriel's financial history, 2 bankruptcies, repossessed cars, debt, details of his past weddings and their costs, screenshots of messages pressuring me. Sarah prepared everything meticulously, like constructing a shield. Meanwhile, my family went on the offensive. Within days, my phone buzzed nonstop with relatives. But this time, the tone had changed. "Rebecca," Aunt Diane whispered, "why didn't you tell us Gabriel was in crisis?" "Crisis? Your parents said it was a financial emergency," she said. "We thought you were refusing to help with medical bills." Medical bills. They were telling people I refused to help my brother with a health crisis. My blood went cold. Another call came, and another, and another. Every one of them carried the same horrified, judgmental tone. How could you refuse to help family when they're suffering? Suffering because they couldn't afford orchids and a jazz band. Worse still, the story leaked into my workplace. I was at lunch with a coworker, Janet, when she cleared her throat. "I heard, your brother is having a medical emergency?" she asked, eyes wide with sympathy. "Your mom told someone at church he needed urgent support." I nearly choked on my soup. "No," I said sharply. "He asked me to fund his third wedding. They're suing me because I said no." Janet blinked. "Oh." The silence that followed was suffocating. I felt myself shrinking inside. Humiliated, exposed, misrepresented, alone. When I told my boyfriend Ethan, he froze. "They sued you?" he repeated slowly. "Your own parents signed the documents?" I nodded. He rubbed his forehead, trying to process it. "Rebecca, this isn't just overstepping. This is abusive." The word hung in the air. Abusive. "I feel stupid," I whispered. "I should have seen this coming." He shook his head. "You're not stupid. You're loyal, and they weaponize that against you." His arms wrapped around me, and for a moment, I let myself lean on him. Just for a moment. Sarah filed a motion to dismiss, but the judge insisted on hearing arguments from both sides. "We'll win," she assured me. "But they're going to fight dirty." She was right. Over the next 4 weeks, the pressure grew into something suffocating. Texts, calls, voicemails dripping with guilt. "Why are you hurting the family? You're tearing us apart. You can end all this by helping your brother." Each message chipped away at me. Each lie felt heavier. By the time the court date arrived, a cold Tuesday morning in March, I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired, exhausted. But beneath the exhaustion, something sharper had begun to form. Resolve. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about survival. This was about identity. This was about the moment I finally stopped being the responsible one they could manipulate. The Kingsman family had made this a war. And now I wasn't walking into court to be their ATM. I was walking in to defend my future. The courthouse felt colder than the March wind outside. Maybe it was the fluorescent lighting. Maybe it was the silence. The thick, humming kind that settles before something irreversible happens. Or maybe it was the sight of my parents sitting beside Gabriel at the plaintiff's table, avoiding my eyes. They looked united, a single front. My entire childhood condensed into one painful image. And I was the enemy. Ethan squeezed my hand before I stepped through the courtroom doors. "You don't owe them your life," he whispered. I nodded, but my throat tightened anyway. Because deep down, some small, bruised part of me still wished they'd chosen me, defended me, believed me. But they hadn't. They chose Gabriel, again. Gabriel's lawyer, a tall, too confident man named Kenneth Walsh, began with theatrical flourish. "Your Honor," he said, stepping forward, "this case is about compassion, about family obligations during times of emotional and financial crisis." I blinked. Crisis? The only crisis here was their entitlement. He continued, voice smooth, like he'd practiced in the mirror. "The defendant, Ms. Rebecca Kingsman, has accumulated substantial wealth, over $220,000 in retirement savings alone. Meanwhile, her brother, Mr. Gabriel Kingsman, faces financial ruin. Their family came to her seeking reasonable assistance, and she coldly refused." Coldly. My jaw clenched. Walsh gestured dramatically toward my parents. "The plaintiffs ask only that Ms. Kingsman provide a temporary loan, a simple act of goodwill to preserve family unity and prevent the emotional devastation of a canceled wedding." I inhaled sharply. There it was. My unwillingness to fund a luxury wedding was now emotional devastation. And my retirement, something I'd nurtured through discipline, sacrifice, and decades of work, was excess savings. Then Walsh turned toward me. "Ms. Kingsman," he said with faux sympathy, "you earn a 6-figure salary, correct?" "Yes." "You have substantial savings?" "I have retirement savings," I corrected, "which is not liquid." "And you admit you refused your brother's request for help?" "I refused to fund a $68,000 wedding," I said calmly. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Walsh smiled like he'd caught me confessing to murder. So you could help, but you chose not to. I chose not to destroy my financial future, I said, voice steady. That's different. He shrugged. Perspective. His voice lowered. Tell the court, Ms. Kingsman, what is more important to you, money or family? A low murmur spread through the gallery. I felt my parents stiffen. Lauren sat rigidly, jaw clenched. I swallowed hard. This isn't about choosing money over family, I said softly. It's about boundaries, about responsibility, and about the fact that Gabriel's wedding is not my financial emergency. Walsh raised an eyebrow. So you admit you prioritized yourself? I admit, I said, that I am allowed to. A hush fell. When it was Sarah's turn, the energy in the room shifted. She didn't posture, she didn't raise her voice. She simply stood, calm as steel. Your Honor, she began, the plaintiff's claims rest on one premise, that a sibling has a legal duty to fund a voluntary luxury event. The judge's eyebrows lifted. Sarah continued, there is no legal doctrine, none, that obligates my client to bankroll a third marriage celebration, especially when it involves premium catering, imported orchids, a live jazz band, and a $70,000 price tag. She turned toward Gabriel. Mr. Kingsman, how much did your first wedding cost? Gabriel squirmed. $18,000? And the second? $28,000. And now you expect your sister to finance a $68,000 third wedding? Color drained from Gabriel's face. Sarah pressed on. Miss Kingsman earns her living through disciplined financial planning, something her brother has consistently failed to practice. He has a documented history of bankruptcies, overspending, and debt. She held up the evidence packet. And these images? She tapped the pages. Were obtained without Rebecca's consent, photographed inside her private home office. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Sarah stepped toward the judge. Not only is this lawsuit baseless, it is malicious. It weaponizes family loyalty to extort money under the guise of obligation. Her voice grew sharper. This is not a financial emergency. This is financial entitlement. The judge leaned back, watching Gabriel with scrutiny that made him visibly shrink. Judge Henderson, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. Mr. Kingsman, do you have any savings? Gabriel hesitated. Some, but not enough. Did you sign wedding contracts knowing you could not afford them? Lauren stiffened beside him. We expected my commission would come through, Gabriel stuttered. The judge's gaze hardened. So your entire financial plan was based on money you hoped would appear? Gabriel said nothing. The judge turned to me. Ms. Kingsman, what would be the penalty for early withdrawal of your retirement funds? I stood. Approximately 38% in taxes and penalties, I said. On $30,000, that's over $11,000 lost, plus the long-term loss of compound growth. My advisor estimates over $100,000 by retirement age. Judge Henderson nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Kingsman. Then, the moment I'd dreaded. Dad stood abruptly. Your Honor, he said loudly, my daughter has a legal obligation to help family in times of need. Dad, I whispered, mortified. Stop. He ignored me. A wedding is a significant life moment, he insisted. Rebecca should support her brother. But the judge's gavel slammed through the room like thunder. Sit down, Mr. Kingsman, or you will be removed from this courtroom. Dad froze, his face strained. Mom clutched his arm. Judge Henderson scanned the room with razor-sharp eyes. I will now issue my ruling. You could hear a pin drop. This case, the judge began, is dismissed with prejudice. Lauren gasped. Gabriel's jaw dropped. My parents stared as if slapped. The judge continued. There is no legal justification for compelling a private citizen to finance a relative's wedding. Weddings are voluntary, discretionary events, not emergencies. Furthermore, she lifted the evidence packet. The plaintiff's use of private financial documents obtained without consent is troubling and suggests malicious intent. She turned to my family. The defendant is awarded attorney fees in the amount of $14,500. Silence hit the room like a tidal wave. I exhaled, slow, shaky, overwhelming. Relief, vindication, and heartbreak all tangled together. Because I hadn't just won. I had watched my family lose their integrity in the process. As people filtered out of the courtroom, no one looked at me. Not Gabriel, not Lauren, not my parents. They walked past as if I were a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe that's what this whole ordeal had revealed. I'd been the daughter they expected things from, not the daughter they cared for. Sarah placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she said quietly. Maybe I had. But as I stood in that courtroom, the victory felt hollow. Because there is no gavel loud enough to drown out the sound of a family breaking. The thing no one tells you about winning is that victory feels different when the people you defeat are your own family. When the judge's gavel fell and the courtroom emptied, I stood frozen in place, watching the backs of the people who raised me walk away without a glance. You'd think I would feel triumphant, vindicated, empowered. Instead, all I felt was a cold, hollow ache, a kind of grief I didn't know how to name. Ethan threaded his fingers through mine as the courtroom doors shut behind us. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said softly. For the first time in weeks, I believed him. My parents didn't call. Gabriel didn't text. Lauren didn't breathe in my direction. Silence wrapped around me like insulation, thick, suffocating, strangely peaceful. But then the fallout began. Lauren's fury hit first. A week after the ruling, she posted a cryptic but unmistakably targeted message on social media. If some people weren't so selfish, love wouldn't suffer. The comments were a parade of condolences and sympathy, all directed at her, all assuming I was the villain of her story. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. 16 months later, they divorced. Not because of me, not because of the wedding, but because Lauren eventually saw what I had known all along. Gabriel didn't need a wedding. He needed therapy, budgeting skills, and emotional maturity. Or, as her divorce filing bluntly stated, irreconcilable differences in financial values and decision-making. The irony of a family law attorney missing every red flag still astonishes me. But the real turning point came much sooner. 3 weeks after the ruling, my parents called. Not to apologize, not at first, but because they had received their bill. Between their own lawyer's fees and the court-ordered payment of mine, they owed over $22,000. When Mom spoke, her voice trembled. "Rebecca, we didn't realize it would cost this much." A bitter, exhausted part of me wanted to reply. "And you thought my retirement money was a pile of loose change?" But I didn't. I simply said, "Yes, Mom. Legal actions have consequences." Dad, for once, was quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "We just wanted to help Gabriel," he murmured. "No," I said gently. "You wanted to save him from learning anything." Silence. "Maybe," Dad whispered, "that wasn't helping him at all." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first crack in their certainty. Over the next few months, the cracks widened. They stopped defending Gabriel's choices, stopped insisting I could afford everything, stopped treating my savings like their contingency fund. Something finally clicked for them. I wasn't selfish. I was simply protecting a life I had built on my own, a life no one else had contributed to, a life they had tried, unintentionally or not, to dismantle. 6 months after the court ruling, Gabriel called. Not to reconcile, not exactly. More like to salvage pride. "Bex," he began, awkward and slow. "Maybe we overreacted." "Maybe?" I asked. A sigh. "Fine, we went too far. The lawsuit was a lot." I let the silence sit. He cleared his throat. "Look, Lauren was under a lot of pressure, and I just wanted to give her the wedding she deserved." "And you were willing to sacrifice me for that," I said quietly. Another long silence. "You're doing really well financially," he finally said. "I guess I just assumed that I would always be there to bail you out," I finished. He didn't deny it. "Yeah," he said softly. And for the first time in my life, I heard something new in his voice. Not entitlement, not anger, not manipulation, just an exhausted, fragile awareness that his actions had consequences. We didn't magically fix everything during that call. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't rebuild decades of imbalance overnight. But we started something. A beginning, not an ending. The most surprising aftermath? No one in my family asked me for money anymore. Not for home repairs, not for vacations, not for temporary loans, not even for birthdays or hospital bills. The legal precedent, even if symbolic, became my shield. The lawsuit they filed to force money out of me became the very thing that protected me from them. A strange poetic justice. My retirement savings, they're thriving. 2 years after the lawsuit, I crossed $280,000 in my accounts. Every dollar sits exactly where it belongs. In my future, not in someone else's fantasy. Ethan and I are still together, stronger even. And my relationship with my parents is cautious, but healing. We take it slow. We avoid money talk. We respect boundaries. It's imperfect, but it's honest. Looking back, the lawsuit wasn't my breaking point. It was my boundary point. The moment I realized I was allowed to choose myself, even when it displeased the people I loved, even when it broke the narrative they'd built about family duty, even when it meant standing alone in a courtroom while the world misjudged me. Because sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to break a cycle. If not, someone else will choose your life for you, your future, your stability, your peace, and that's too high a price. So I'll ask you the same question I asked myself. When family pressures you to sacrifice your future for their mistakes, what matters more, keeping the peace or protecting your life?